basis.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Fantasy Mafia podcast. I am your host, Jerry, and I'm here with my co-host, Jordan, a.k.a. Dr. Fantasy, Zach, a.k.a. Apex, and Blake, a.k.a. Blake. What's going on, guys?
Yo, yo, yo.
Out.
Going good.
All right, so we are a couple weeks away from the start of the fantasy season. So we just put together a bunch of questions that I'm going to ask, and each of you guys are going to answer. And yeah, I mean, it's just kind of getting into some fantasy players, seeing who we got here for some breakouts and some sleepers and some stuff like that. I mean, there's really no format, no process or anything. We're just gonna kind of just freeball it. So we'll start off with the first one here, and just so we don't have any confusion, we'll kind of just go round robin. We'll get your thoughts first. Apex, you answer first. Blake, you go second. And then Jordan, you'll kind of clean us up. All right. So we'll do it in that order. Every question.
Sounds good.
All right. So our first question here is, who is this year's Devontae Parker? Basically, what we mean by that is a wide receiver that's been in the league for a few years, and then he finally broke out last year, playing with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Preston Williams going down kind of helped him out a little bit, but he's a former high-round pick that he's just been kind of underwhelming since he came into the year. And last year he finally put up some wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 numbers. So who was that player this year?
All right. Well, I put down Christian Kirk. I feel like the Cardinals trading for Hopkins will really open up the field for him. He'll probably be going against like teams number 2 defensive back and most likely be getting single coverage for the majority of the year. So I put Christian Kirk. I feel like year 2 with Murray. I think they'll be a passing team, and I just think that there will be enough balls for to go around in that offense for him to really have a nice breakout season in the hindsight of Hopkins being there.
All right, Blake, who's your Devontae Parker this year?
Mine is Adam Humphries. I know he's being basically undrafted. I think even in our new Dynasty League. Reason being was because he's being slept on because he was hurt last year, and he just changed teams, and he didn't really have a breakout with the Bucks when he was there in 2018. But it's as close to one as he could have. He could have, but I think he's going to actually go off more because Corey Davis, I think, honestly, is a cut candidate halfway through the season. He just hasn't gotten it done. AJ Brown is the guy there for sure. Jonnu Smith is going to be probably the second highest target on the team. Derrick Henry doesn't really catch the ball. There's got to be someone there that works in the slot and gets a lot of the receptions, and it's really Adam Humphries. They haven't done a lot in the draft or anything to address that issue at wide receiver with Corey Davis. So I think Adam Humphries really could come on and really surprise some people, and he's a great pick later on. If you want a piece of this offense, he's definitely an option.
How much does that hurt you, Jerry?
Oh, it hurts me. So we should have just ended with this question because now I don't want to go on with the rest of the show. If I were answering the question, mine would be Corey Davis. I just want to bring up a little quick tidbit here before we get to Docs. And last year during free agency, it was talked about Adam Humphries was possibly looking at New England, which is funny, but he decided to go chase the money and go to Tennessee. But had he stayed in Tampa Bay, he would be playing with Tom Brady instead of going to New England last year. So that's a little funny there. Moving on to Doc, who's yours?
Mine is Brashad Perriman, now of the New York Jets. I mean, I was really impressed what he did with the Tampa Bay Bucks down the stretch last year. I mean, I think this Jets defense is going to be horrendous without Jamal Adams, and they've lost quite a few pieces. So I think they're going to be down. They're going to have to pass quite a bit. Sam Darnold is underrated, even though Adam Gase is there. But I was just overall really impressed with the strides that Brashad Perriman made down the stretch. He was the 11th best wide receiver over the last half of the season, and he was wide receiver 3 over the last 5 weeks. So he showed that he has the ability with some volume. So they also did only sign him to a 1-year deal. So he has a lot to play for this season. He's still looking for a long-term, big-time deal, and this is his opportunity to prove it.
Another one of those former first-round picks that.
Where's Kevin White? Is Kevin White still in the league?
I don't remember where he was signed by somebody last year.
It was Cardinals at one point.
Yeah, it was the Cardinals. Yeah, that's who it was. All right, some pretty good answers. I think I'm going to give the win to me with Corey Davis. Next one we got is who is this year's Lamar Jackson. So it's a young QB. It doesn't necessarily have to be a second year, but within like the past 2-3 years, that puts up an MVP caliber season. Obviously, we saw it first year. 2 years ago, we saw Patrick Mahomes with his 50 touchdown season. Then last year, we saw it with Lamar Jackson with a 36 touchdown season. So who is it this year? When Apex, it's on you.
All right. Well, I had two here. The first one I thought of, I'll stick with Arizona and go Kyler Murray. I just talked about they traded for Hopkins. It's year 2 of Cliff. I just think that they're going to open the offense up even more than they already have with all those weapons there and the fast tempo that some teams do that they bring from college. So I'll go with Kyler Murray. I think his touchdowns can be increased with Hopkins there. As I said, they're just going to throw it all over. Second guy I'll bring up a little bit, Daniel Jones. I just think he's got a lot of weapons there to work with, and sort of the same thing. They're just going to kind of let him loose and see what they have there. So I think both of those guys could do a MVP caliber season.
Yeah, we talked about this I think off camera and in our chat a little bit. For Daniel Jones to do it, he'd really have to do it because he's got a really tough first half of the season. So it's going to be, if he could overcome that, then that'll show that this guy's for real, and hopefully he sticks around for a while and wins a couple Super Bowls like Eli Manning did. Blake, who do you got?
I have Teddy Bridgewater, and this one kind of surprised me a little bit just because I've been out on Teddy Bridgewater since he went to Carolina, just because the narrative of he doesn't like to throw deep or anything. But I really looked into him, and I played back some of the tape when he was in the Saints and stuff, and I've really warned him, kind of like we talked about in the last pod. He's going to have to throw deep. He can't just rely on CMC. He's got more there. He's got Samuel, who's this nice gadgety player who I hope breaks out personally. And they also added Robbie Anderson, which kind of surprised me because just given, I guess, how I said the narrative on how he only is kind of a shallow passer. But he's going to have to get some production too. Robbie Anderson is a great playmaker, and I really expect Ian Thomas to kind of break out this season. Teddy Bridgewater loves his tight ends. When he was on the Vikings, he really relied on Kyle Rudolph there with their tight ends coach. Ironically enough, just went to the Bears, so I'm hoping for a little Bears tight end actions too as well. So,
all right, Doc, who do you got?
Well, I'm going to bring up Gardner Minshew just because I want to talk about his mustache, and for no other reason except that, my pick is Gardner Minshew. So, I've mentioned it a few times. One of the big things that's underrated about his game is his running ability. He did have almost 350 rushing yards last season and only 13 starts. So, given a full 16-game season, I think it is possible that he could rush for right around 400 yards, which gives him a great floor, I'll say, for fantasy purposes. I do think that this defense is going to be pretty horrendous this season. I've said that twice already, but they're going to have a nice game flow for the passing game. So I'd expect the Jaguars to be within the top 10, maybe even top 5 in pass attempts based on that terrible defense by itself. So I think he'll have a nice season. One of the things that went under the radar last year, and we talk about Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, all these other rookies who I really like as well, but Gardner Minshew actually had the highest quarterback rating last season. So as much as we talk about the narrative with him and his persona, he actually played pretty well last season. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in a full year. I'm actually excited too because they didn't really bring in any competition. I think everybody was really counting on them and bringing in a veteran, and they really, I think they brought in Mike Glennon, and that's about it. So this is his job to lose at this point.
Don't say that name to me ever again.
The good old Mike Glennon.
Giraffe neck Glennon. Yeah, with Minshew, it's kind of weird. He's like one of those guys that has really nothing to play for and everything to play for at the same time. Like you said, Doc, he really doesn't have any competition behind him. He really has no threat of losing his job. But at the same time, if they do bad enough to where they're picking first, second overall, he might lose his job to Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields or somebody like that. So he's got to show that he might be the guy here, but he also has to do enough to where maybe they win some games so they're not picking a Trevor Lawrence and he doesn't lose his job. And he kind of leads into our next question. Who is this year's Gardner Minshew? Now, in my description, I said late round draft pick that kind of takes over the starting job. Quietly good season. Doesn't necessarily have to be a rookie. But it doesn't have to be a late round draft pick. Just somebody that's really not starting right now, or you're really not expecting a lot out of them, and they could end up having a season that Gardner had last year, where he was really efficient, throwing the ball, little touchdowns, and show that he could maybe be the guy.
All right. Well, for this one, I bent the rules a little bit. I went with a late first round guy in the NFL draft. I went with Teddy Bridgewater for this one, and so he's already the starter. But this is like his first year since the injury in Minnesota that he's gone into the year as the number one quarterback, and I just think, with Matt Rule coming over, bringing in a new system to the team, it feels like Gardner Minshew last year. There's no pressure on this team at all to perform. Everybody kind of counts them out already. So I think that's grounds for them to just kind of see what they have and throw the ball around and, try to execute this offense. And, I just think that, he quietly has a good year. I mean, maybe not top 10 or top 15, but I think he could be an average quarterback that, could break this offense open and really cause problems for the NFC South. And being in the NFC South, I think he could be in a lot of shootouts. So, potential for him to put up a nice season.
Yeah, I'm loving everybody on the Teddy Bridgewater hype train, because that is my dude this year. Blake, who do you got?
So I kind of broke the rules a little bit here, keeping with the trend. I kind of had two guys because they either one of them could start. Alex Smith and Dwayne Haskins. I personally think that the Washington Redskins are going to be slept on across this year entirely.
The Washington what?
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 Now I have to edit that.
The Washington football team are going to be slept on, and I think honestly, good for me, because I want all the pieces of the Redskins this year. Maybe not the quarterback, because I'm not sure exactly which one it's going to be, but I think regardless, Terry McLaurin's going to still be doing Terry McLaurin things and being great. Steve Sims, I know Jordan's a big fan of, especially in the later rounds. Antonio Gandy-Golden, Trey Quinn's returning. I think they just drafted a tight end, this season.
They brought in Thad Moss.
Sorry?
They brought in Thad Moss. He wasn't drafted, but they brought him in.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He was undrafted. And then, they don't have Darius Geisler anymore, but they still have a plethora of running back weapons. They have Antonio Gibson, who's getting CMC comps. They have Bryce Love, who's kind of unproven. AP, who's still somehow in the league. So I think, honestly, this team could really be supported by just a halfway decent quarterback. And Alex Smith has never set the world on fire, and I think he could, have a nice rebound here. He looked great today in his first day of camp. Back from the injury. It's a great thing to see, kind of just doing the same thing that Teddy Bridgewater did. Dwayne Haskins, if he wants to keep his job, he's going to have to compete. Maybe it's going to be kind of like a Trubisky thing. He's got to breathe it out his neck. Finally, he'll show something. So I'm excited to see what one or both of these guys can do this year, and see if they can compete with one another and turn out a halfway good, decent season.
Building off that quickly, I'm going to talk about another Washington football team member later, but I think Haskins is going to start. They just took him in the first round. He did start to catch on towards the last 3 games of last season, so at this point you got to give him a full year to see what he can do. If anything, I really like Alex Smith being in the locker room, because I think he can help with Haskins' development and just becoming a professional quarterback, because if anything, Alex Smith has been a very solid, reliable quarterback and a great leader throughout his career, so I think that's a huge positive for Haskins just in the locker room, and not something we're personally going to see, but I think it makes a huge impact. But for my answer to this,
did you break the rules?
I did not break the rules. I picked Jared Stidham, actually. So I think everybody with Cam Newton there has Cam Newton penciled in as the starter for most of the season, but I think the reality is that if Cam doesn't change his style of play, I don't think he's going to make it through a full season, honestly. Based on the hits that his body's taken throughout his career, he can't be that mobile quarterback that he was in the past. Otherwise, he will break down quicker than he wants to. So as much as I think Cam Newton has a lot to play for this year, if he does falter at this point, the Patriots are in a weird transition period. So I wouldn't be surprised if they gave Stidham the reins for the last half of the season to see what he can do and see if he can have any impact moving forward. So not a guy that I necessarily say is going to be overly fantasy relevant, but if he gets the opportunity, I think he'd be an interesting name to monitor.
All right, and just I wanted to go back a little bit before Jordan started to talk a lot. Blake, you know who would not have broken the rules? Would have been Kyle Allen. So you lose a point for that.
Yeah.
Who is this year's Kenyon Drake? So this description I had for it was a player who kind of started the season off slow, had a first, and then it kind of exploded in the second half. In Kenyon Drake's case, he was obviously traded to the Arizona Cardinals from the Miami Dolphins, but he doesn't necessarily have to be traded in this situation. We've seen, I mean, it could be a rookie, it could be a guy that already was traded, it could be a guy that team's been waiting on for a couple of years now. So, Apex, who do you got here?
All right, I went the rookie route, and you guys know I've been kind of anti-rookies, at least for the running backs, for most of the offseason, because of the whole situation that we're in. No preseason. I just feel like they, maybe won't get on the field as quickly as in past years. But I have been rising on Jonathan Taylor. I think he's a guy that could really take over that backfield sooner rather than later. I don't view Marlon Mack as great running back. I view him as probably a little bit above average, and I just think Taylor probably not going to have a hard time taking over. The other one I had that more fits this bill is Cam Akers. I believe the Rams are going to kind of be a team that's going to try out what they have. They want Cam Akers to be the guy, but they also drafted Henderson last year. They have Malcolm Brown, who seemed to be a thorn in the side last year with taking goal line touchdowns from Gurley. So until somebody really emerges in this backfield, I think we could see a big committee. But I would give the edge to Akers breaking out in the second half of the year if he won that job.
All right, couple pair of rookies there. I think they're both really good answers. This is the year where rookies are probably going to break out towards halfway through the season, especially the ones like Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, who all went to teams that when we were watching the draft, we were kind of just scratching our heads thinking, why would this team take them? But they don't care about our fantasy teams. They just want to make their team better, and that's exactly what they did. But we could see all four of these rookies. Actually, I didn't say Cam Akers, you did. So all four of these rookies kind of just take over halfway through. Blake, who did you have?
So kind of echoing my last pick, I have Bryce Love here. Obvious. I think this is an obvious one now, especially now that Darius Geis is gone. But even before that, Darius Geis was injury prone. Bryce Love just got hurt too. But I don't think Peyton Barber is much of anything on this team. I know he just got some coach speak hype the other day. I don't buy it. I think he's the odd man out. Gibson's going to be kind of this gadgety person I could envision. McKissick's going to be more of a pass catcher. AP, if he makes the team, I could see maybe being a goal line back in like really dire situations. But I think Bryce Love is going to get all the shots he can at this job, and I think he's going to run away with it.
All right, good answer there. I don't hate that at all. Bryce Love is a guy that you can get late in drafts and even undrafted in some cases, because you're looking at it and you're like, I don't want anybody from this Washington team, so he might be slipping and slipping far. Doc, who's yours?
So I have two different ones that I listed. The first one was Ronald Jones. And I know they have a lot of backs in their backfield in Tampa right now, LaShawn McCoy, Keyshawn Vaughn, but I really think that when push comes to shove, you could see Ronald Jones emerge from this pack. So he might start off slow, might only provide low-end flex value, but I think if he's given an opportunity, this is already a guy that was pretty consistently a back-end RB2 last year, went over 1,000 yards between his rushing and receiving total, so he showed a little bit of ability. So I think if they let him loose, he could be a little better, and at this point, I think he deserves that opportunity. I'm not a big Keyshawn Vaughn fan. He's a very good pass blocker. I think that's one of the reasons he was brought in, but I don't think he's going to be overly fantasy relevant. Then the second is Matt Breida, now with the Miami Dolphins. And one of the big things for me whenever I saw him in San Francisco is Matt Breida is really elusive, and he was very explosive, and he was always the one back that stood out to me in San Francisco. So I'm interested to see an opportunity where I think he can take a larger cut of the backfield work in Miami. I know Jordan Howard's there, but he's more of a plotter goal line back in my opinion, so he will take goal line work. But I think Breida and Chan Gailey's pass happy the more up-tempo offense. I think Breida can take more of the work there. So you might see him start off slow, maybe more of a 50-50 timeshare, but I think Breida has a lot of talent and can take this backfield over given some time.
All right. The one thing I noticed about both your guys is both of their counterparts, which you've also mentioned their names, are kind of going like right around the same area. And I'm seeing a lot of people, especially at the turn picks, taking one and then taking the other. So people are ending up with both Breida and Howard on their team, and they're also ending up with Ronald Jones and Keyshawn Vaughn on their teams, which isn't a bad idea, but it could be a waste of a roster spot if one of these other guys kind of emerges from there. The thing with Keyshawn Vaughn, though, is Bruce Arians doesn't necessarily like younger first year, second year running backs, so he's probably going to use a lot more Ronald Jones back there. Plus, there's a lot of other talent that's on that team. That's the football is going to be spread out a lot, so excellent options there. Good late round picks too. And then who was this year's Aaron Jones? So an under the radar running back, a guy not basically out of those not out of those top four, or not those top four, your Christian McCaffreys and Barkleys, somebody that's not one of those top four that could end up leading the league in touchdowns this year.
All right. For me, Aaron Jones was about a third to fourth round pick, so that's kind of last year. So that's kind of where I looked. I ended up with Chris Carson, all dependent on his health. I mean, the guy has to stay on the field, but when he does, he's been great. And I just feel like, the Seahawks can, they're a very run-heavy team. Russell Wilson's got good weapons with Lockett and Metcalf, and the tight ends that they've used in the recent years. So, yeah, I think Chris Carson could be one that breaks out with touchdowns. Touchdowns from year to year are kind of hard to predict. You don't know if the guy's going to go down or up. So, I kind of went with the situation with this one, a run-heavy team, a good offense. I think Carson could get, some more goal line work, get some, double-digit touchdowns on for 2020.
Yeah, I like that one a lot too, and their defense got better too with just the addition of Jamal Adams. So they're going to be in a lot of games where they may be just trying to run out the clock and getting some early rushing touchdowns there. Blake.
Yeah. So my pick, you guys all know I really don't like this player, but I really have to admit that he could really go off this season, and it's Joe Mixon. This team's going to look completely different this year. They're bringing back Zach Taylor as a head coach, but last year it was kind of just a wash. They were just tanking for Burrow, and I think Burrow's going to be a great quarterback. AJ Green's coming back. They just drafted T. Higgins. Tyler Boyd's going to be returning after kind of sliding into that wide receiver one role for them. I don't know that they really have like a tight end of note, but there's no Rodney Anderson breathing down Joe Mixon's neck this year. They just released him. I guess you could say Travion Williams and Gio Bernard will take work from him, but that's it. And I think this team is actually going to be pretty competitive, and they're going to be scoring. And Joe Mixon gets some pass catching work, but ultimately he's going to be the goal line back, and I think he's honestly going to be a 3-down back this year, and he could easily run away with this year's Aaron Jones title.
All right, Doc, I know you want to throw in a little Gio Bernard there and then dip into yours.
Don't ever say Gio Bernard's name in vain. Yeah, I have two guys here. The first, I was kind of thinking along the same lines as Apex originally, a guy going in that third, fourth range. So for me, that's Melvin Gordon, and I think that the 50-50 timeshare that a lot of people think is going to happen in Denver's backfield is not going to be the way it plays out, because the reality to me, and I've mentioned this several times, but I just think Melvin Gordon is a better complete back than Phillip Lindsay. He's better in the passing game. He has better vision, better elusiveness. There's not one thing that Phillip Lindsay does better than Melvin Gordon, so I really think Melvin Gordon's going to see the lion's share of the work in that backfield. I mean, this is a guy already. Aaron Jones had 19 touchdowns last year, so if you figure a guy has to reach right around that mark, Melvin Gordon's reached 14 a few times, 3 of his last 4 seasons. he had 12 touchdowns or more. So this is a guy that's proven he can score some touchdowns. So I see some potential there for him, and I think he slipped because of that Philip Lindsay narrative, but I don't necessarily think he's going to bite into his work as much as people think. Then my second guy was Josh Jacobs, who's more of a second-round pick right now, but the Raiders ran a pretty heavy run game last year. Josh Jacobs did miss a few games, but he's their primary goal line back. I know everybody debates whether or not he's going to be more involved in the passing game, and that's still to be determined. But I think overall, between his goal line work and the potential of him gaining a few touchdowns through the air, gives him some upside there.
All right, another group of excellent answers there. Sticking with the running backs, who is this year's Austin Eckler? This is a guy that was kind of forced into the lineup either due to a holdout or an injury. Ends up finishing the season top 10. I mean, we could know about it next week, or we could know about it just like, say, Alexander Madison because Dalvin Cook holds out. I said that because neither of you guys had him. So who's this year's Austin Eckler?
Well, I thought of Madison, but I kind of felt that was a little bit easy going with the holdout already. But I went with a much later guy. I think Brian Hill is a guy to kind of keep your eye on. I wouldn't go to say that he'd be top 10, but I think out the gate he could kind of provide like a Duke Johnson or even like an Eckler type role himself. Out the backfield and garnishing a few carries from Gurley. I think the team kind of saw what Ito Smith didn't really like it. So, Brian Hill was kind of the beneficiary last year in a limited role. They signed Todd Gurley there. Obviously, the concern with him is the arthritis in his knee, and that could flare up anytime. It could be this week, after the week one. I should say, or halfway through the season, or at any point we could see Gurley just kind of go down or have snaps limited, or something like that. And I think Brian Hill could be a reliable asset down the stretch, perhaps. Like I said, not top 10. I wouldn't want to put him up there, but probably a waiver guy at some point in the year that could really help your squad out.
All right, Blake, kind of feeding off Apex here. Who's your guy?
Yeah, everything you just said, except put it under Ito Smith, because he's got to be the guy to actually take over the Gurley job when Gurley inevitably gets hurt. And I don't wish that on anybody, obviously, but I think it's just inevitable. Like, arthritis is really finicky, and luckily he's playing in like warmer weather for the most part, but ultimately, like, arthritis it's going to affect you at some point. You're never going to know when. So I think Ito Smith is actually going to take this job. I think Ito Smith only played something like 7 games last year, but he had 4.8 yards per rush attempt. I think that's good enough to take the starting job if they need somebody. I don't think they're going to be going out and getting a free agent, because what free agent is left? Devonta Freeman? I don't think he's going to be coming back to the Falcons. I think he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder with them. So I think Ito Smith is actually going to be the guy here. It's possible, though, I suppose, that Brian Hill and him could form some sort of committee, kind of like a Matt Breida, Jordan Howard kind of thing. But ultimately, I think they want to use one guy. I don't think they're wanting to do that Devonta Freeman, Tevin Coleman thing anymore. All
right, Doc, tell me you got Kadri Olson.
Kadri Olson, oh my gosh, what do you think this is? I'll give you 3 quick names because that's the kind of guy I am. The first one is Damian Harris, and I know nobody likes to touch the Patriots' backfield, and I'm definitely right there with you, but the reality is if he's able to take the lion's share of those carries, he does have potential to break through. With the Lamar Miller signing, I don't think things are as optimistic for him, but the potential's there if he can work his way into that rotation. More likely, though, for me, I have Zach Moss and Latavius Murray. Zach Moss, for me, as you know, Jerry, the Bills run a very run-heavy scheme, and if Devin Singletary was to go down, I think that Zach Moss could be a top 10 back that really nobody's talking about. And, the potential's there. Devin Singletary is a smaller back, so he already dealt with a few nagging injuries last season. So I could see Zach Moss being a huge fantasy asset if Singletary was to go down. And the same thing for Lat Murray, Alvin Kamara, and I've already mentioned several times he's had some pretty damaging injury reports from what I've read from some medical professionals. So if he's able, or if he does go down at all this season, Lat Murray really is the number one guy with very limited competition. So I think he could have a high-end RB2 value.
I like I like all your guys' picks, but I like the Lat Murray one the best. With Damian Harris and Zach Moss, they both have vulturing quarterbacks too, so it's going to be a little bit tougher for them with those big body quarterbacks that like to run. But Lat Murray, I don't think Drew Brees is taking many balls to the house. Who is this year's Darren Waller? I had, when I wrote the question, I put Darren Waller / Mark Andrews, but Mark Andrews was a high drafted pick in when he was drafted, so he kind of just stuck with Darren Waller, tight end that kind of came out of nowhere, and he could be a top 5 tight end drafted next year, along with your Kelseys and Kittles and Mark Andrews.
All right, I went with 2 options here, both very athletic tight ends. I went Jonnu Smith and Mike Gesicki. I feel like very athletic guys. Both of them have the opportunity to kind of take over the number 2 role for their team. Gesicki only has, Parker and then perhaps Preston Williams kind of, competing with him. Whereas Jonnu Smith kind of has A.J. Brown, and then we've mentioned Humphreys and Davis a little bit earlier, but I think the situation kind of presents itself like it did for Waller last year, coming in an athletic guy with the opportunity in Oakland, and not a lot of guys ahead of him. They were expected to have Brown, and then their top option turned into Tyrell Williams. So I feel like he was very heavily relied on out the gate, and I think that's what it kind of comes down to with these 2 options with Jonnu and Gesicki here. I think there's enough opportunity and passing volume for them to have a good breakout year.
All right, Blake.
So I really love the tight ends this year. I'm going to rattle off a couple here, but my main one that I love is Chris Herndon. Last year he burned a lot of people because everyone was expecting the breakout, right? He had that breakout in 2018. I think he had like 3 touchdowns 3 weeks in a row, and people really expected more out of him. Obviously, he had some issues staying on the field, but Gase really likes his tight ends. He's drawing some hype in the offseason here more recently. I don't think Darnold's going to be getting mono again this year, so he's going to be staying on the field, hopefully, and getting him the ball. Ryan Griffin's hurt. He was the one that kind of replaced Herndon last year, but he's older and he's injured right now, so he won't be there. And this pass catching group isn't all that inspiring. Mims, Crowder, Perriman, I don't really get excited about any of those names. Mims maybe in a couple of years, but not this first year, especially with the shortened off season. And I hate Adam Gase and I hate the Jets. I don't think they're going to be anything great. But if you're looking for a silver lining there, I think it's definitely Chris Herndon. Tight end is so deep this year, guys. You can honestly wait. That's honestly why I traded Jordan the other day in our Dynasty League, a pick that ended up being Travis Kelce because he was so late. You can get Hayden Hurst, Jonnu Smith, Mike Gesicki, O.J. Howard, Hunter Henry, Ian Thomas, Jack Doyle. Those are all picks in different parts of the draft that are honestly values, and I think they're going to have great seasons. But Chris Herndon, I think especially, is going to have a great season.
All right. Doc, these guys didn't leave you any tight ends. Do you have any to name off?
Oh, no. Since Apex took my boy Gesicki, I don't have much to talk about. I think Gesicki is going to be a top 5 guy for years to come. I think he's the future of the tight end position, but I kind of went in a different direction because when I think of Darren Waller last season, this was a guy that had under 200 career yards, and then he really came out of nowhere. So I was trying to think of guys along that line. So Irv Smith from the Vikings was one for me. He really started to catch on towards the end of last season and was actually out snapping Kyle Rudolph the last 5 games of the year. Another super athletic guy. This is a heavy 2 tight end offense. And, we talk about Adam Thielen there, and we can talk about Justin Jefferson and Olabisi Johnson, but realistically, we don't know who the second option is there right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if a guy like Irv Smith kind of took that step forward and took that role over. Same goes for Jay Sternberger, who is another name for me. And we've talked about the Packers and how we're uncertain and who's going to be the second option there. We know Devontae Adams is one, but I wouldn't be surprised if Jay Sternberger was a number 2 guy there by the end of the season. Then the last one is super deep. I've actually seen quite a few Twitter threads on him recently, and it's kind of an interesting name to me, but that's Logan Thomas from the Washington football team. So as of right now, he's their starting tight end, and it's kind of interesting. He was a quarterback at Virginia Tech. He actually, I never realized, was the number 1 rated tight end coming out of high school. So he actually had that upside early on in his career. Super athletic guy. Like I said, I mean, that's super deep. I mean, you're talking a guy that's I've seen him drafted in a few leagues where there's like 50 rounds that I'm in. I mean, but I besides that, probably not a guy you're drafting, but a name I want to throw out there because I think it's an intriguing one, and we'll see what happens there. They have some weapons there in Washington, but it's the same thing, a lot of unproven weapons.
All right. Yeah, Jonnu Smith was definitely one of the ones that I was thinking about. Blake, you rattled off a few names there. Hayden Hurst was another one. Mike Gesicki, we've talked about a lot this offseason. But as we mentioned also multiple times this offseason, this tight end class is really super deep. It's not like 2 years ago you had Gronk in the top 10 when he missed 4 or 5 games. Now we're going to see a lot more guys that are getting you more points from the tight end position. I mean, obviously you want to try to get your hands on a Kelsey and a Kittle and a Mark Andrews, but if you could get one of these other guys a little later and get value and grab a wide receiver or a running back in the spot where Kelsey and Kittle are going, then that's definitely a way to go. Next question we got here is, who's this year's Chris Godwin? Basically a guy that was taken as like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 flex play that ended up playing like a wide receiver 1, came out and just set the world on fire. He had a lot of passing opportunity there with Jameis Winston just throwing the ball all over the place. I mean, 30 times to even the other team. But who's this year's Chris Godwin?
All right. Well, this is pretty close to a my guy, plant the flag on this guy as I can get for this year, and that's DK Metcalf for me. I wrote an article about him. I took him in our Dynasty League. I mean, I just love everything about him. His measurables are, just what you would want in a typical, prototypical number 1 receiver. He's got the build of like a Megatron or a Julio or, somebody like that. And I just feel like he can be in for a big year this year with Wilson. He was very efficient in the red zone, which is a little bit surprising considering Lockett, was probably top in the league. I believe when I wrote my article about this, he was in the top of the league. But I looked at Metcalf as well, and he was very efficient in the red zone. So, he just all over the field. He's a great deep threat. He's got blazing speed. He's the bigger body, so you would typically think of, a red zone threat there. So they're just going to use him all over the place, and I just foresee a really good year for Metcalf. And like I said, I'm planting a flag on him, man. Like, I'm trying to get him every single draft, even, drafting him ahead of ADP a couple rounds or so. So DK Metcalf's my guy this year.
Jordan, there's just something about DK Metcalf that I really like. Do you know what it is?
That he takes pictures without a shirt on?
Yeah, that's one of them. He's my type of receiver. Blake, who's your guy or guys, or you're going to rattle off the whole league here?
One of the guys I was going to go with, Jordan has, so I ended up pivoting. But the one I'm kind of really getting into lately is Jalen Reagor. I know he literally, like, I know.
Jerry's messing with our document here.
Yep. Jesus, guys. Come on.
You put in Corey Davis, Jerry. All right. Go, Blake. Go back on the Reagor here.
Edit that out.
All right, yeah. All right, Blake, who's your guy that you got here?
So I pivoted a little bit because I'm really starting to like Jalen Reagor more and more. He was originally reported, I think, back in early August that he was learning the X spot, but I think now somewhere on Twitter, I believe I saw today from some beat reporters that he's expecting to learn different positions within the wide receiver role, and he's going to be doing a lot more different things, and they're going to try to roll him and Deshaun Jackson out there simultaneously. They said until Alshon Jeffrey returns, I don't care if Alshon Jeffrey returns. That guy's not going to be on the team very much longer. And that's not even because I hate him because he burned the Bears, but whatever. No, Jalen Rieger is going to be amazing. And they don't really have anybody else. I mean, they drafted a plethora of wide receivers, but he was drafted to be the main guy. He's like Deshaun Jackson plus, and on top of him being younger. Him, Greg Ward, Deshaun Jackson are going to be the main 3 wide receivers to start off this season, and I think he's going to do great things with Carson Wentz or Jalen Hurts when Carson Wentz goes down.
Yeah, that's a good. I like that one too. He's definitely got all the potential to even be the top rookie this year. So it's gonna be fun to watch them there.
I originally liked Justin Jefferson to be the top rookie, but I definitely pivoted to Jalen Rieger.
Oh yeah, your bias is showing.
How's that now?
Say that again.
I said, how's that now?
Because you chose not to go with the Viking, being a Bears fan.
Yeah, I guess you got me. You got me.
Who do you got, Doc?
So I had a few names. I originally wanted to talk about DJ Moore, but he's more going as a wide receiver 1 now, so not really relevant in this category. So I'm going to go with Terry McLaurin. And we've talked about quite a few Washington guys today, which is kind of strange. I know a lot of people were really down on the Washington offense as a whole, and I would say a majority of people don't really want any part of them. But I was very encouraged by the last 3 games with Dwayne Haskins. Terry McLaurin averaged over 90 yards per game in each of those 3 games, had 2 touchdowns. So I really liked the connection that they were building. And we talk about all these questionable weapons they have with Steven Sims and Gandy Golden. And so, I mean, I like some of those options, but Terry McLaurin is their guy. We haven't really talked about, but they have that chemistry from Ohio State as well. So this offseason is really not going to impact them developing even further together because they came in with that chemistry. So I like Terry McLaurin to take the next step forward this season.
All right, some really good answers there. Now we got, who is this year's Dante Pettis, a overhyped sleeper who basically just like does nothing. A guy that you're maybe getting in the last couple of rounds, mid to late rounds, and you're trying to grab them everywhere that you can, and they end up really kind of just stinking the bed. Who do you got, Apex?
All right, I went with Hollywood Brown on this one. You know, he's a mid-round guy. A lot of people are really excited about him projecting a breakout. And that was the same with Pettis last year. He was going in the same range, and people expected him to take the step forward. And, you know, I just feel like, Brown is kind of the opposite of that. I feel like he's just going to be more of a role-type player, like a deep threat, and not really, do too much else this year. You typically think of deep threats as not very, scoring a lot of touchdowns unless they break off a long one. But I went with Brown. He's about an 8th round pick, and people are taking the shot on him in that round, projecting him to, be in our last category with, playing up to Godwin's level and taking that step forward. And I just think it's going to be the opposite for him.
Does part of your answer come with a like a Lamar regression, or just?
Oh, I love
Not necessarily a Lamar regression, but I don't have the stats in front of me, but he wasn't very good last year either. I mean, I know he was hurt a couple games. He had a great week 1, and everybody was high on him, but he finished, maybe 600 yards or so, I believe, somewhere around that range. So, he was a lot of hit or miss. He missed some games, and like I said, he had that week 1 that was, just insane, but not much else after that. So, I kind of feel like that fits into the, Pettis category instead of a Godwin type of category.
Yeah, no, I could agree. Blake, who do you got?
Yeah, so I went with Derek Carr here. Originally, I was going with someone higher on the board, but kind of going back to the the Dante Pettis thing, he went a lot lower. I don't think Derek Carr is anything that's special. I love the weapons they have around him. Don't get me wrong. I'm not crazy about Gruden, but he's a decent coach. He's better than his brother. But Derek Carr, to me, just doesn't excite me. The weapons around him don't really fit who he is as a quarterback. He wants to throw short passes. He doesn't throw deep. I don't care what his brother's tweeting about on Twitter. The guy doesn't throw deep. And they have all these guys that are deep threats. I mean, they have Darren Waller, who he excelled with last year, and I think that's great. But you can't be one dimensional, and I don't think he keeps the job. But that's not to say I don't think Mariota's going to run away with the job. I don't know who their quarterback's going to be, but I don't think it's going to be either one of them, and I'm kind of staying away from them. Although I am, it's kind of weird because I do want to draft like Brian Edwards late, which is everyone's sleeper lately. So I'm just staying away from Carr, and if I can get like a piece of the offense later, that's kind of cheap. I'll take one and take the shot on it in case I'm wrong, but ultimately I'm just kind of staying away from him.
Now you kind of you definitely make a lot of good points, and I don't really disagree with anything that you said. Just it doesn't quite fit into the question though, because Derek Carr isn't really being overhyped.
I think he is though. I think a lot of people are overhyping him because of the pieces that they just drafted, all the wide receivers. Josh Jacobs going into his second year. I think he is being overhyped. He's not being hyped much, but the hype he is getting is too much hype.
I mean, he's going as like a mid or what or what position does he play? He plays quarterback, right? He's going as a mid like QB2 right now. Not really. I mean, like I said, I'm not gonna.
I'm not. I'd rather take a shot on Foles.
Yeah.
And that's not biased to the Bears. I'll take a shot on Haskins. I'll take a shot on Alex Smith. I don't want Derek Carr. And that's crazy because I just wrote an article about him maybe 3 months ago about how much I liked him, and I'm fading him now hard.
That's the joys of fantasy football. Your mind can change just overnight, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Doc, who do you got?
Number 1 is A.J. Dillon. People need to stop obsessing over his thighs on Twitter because I don't care about that. And
let me just go unlike all those pictures.
Saquon Barkley's thighs ended up panning out, so.
Yeah, I think they're a little different. Maybe
a little bit of a different player.
But I know a lot of people are hyping him up quite a bit right now. I've already done a few mocks since training camp has started, and he's going way higher than he should be. This is still Aaron Jones's backfield. I think moving forward that A.J. Dillon's a great dynasty asset. I think he does take the starter's role over after this season when Aaron Jones goes into free agency. But this year I don't think he has a ton of value. My other one actually is McCole Hardman. The reason being, and I know Apex loves taking McCole Hardman in best ball drafts, and I definitely think he's a great asset for best ball drafts just because he does have a lot of boom or bust potential. But for me, realistically, I think he's the 5th option in that passing game. And as efficient as that offense is, they actually don't pass as much as people think. They're actually 18th in pass attempts last year. A lot of it just has to do with Mahomes' efficiency and Andy Reid's system. So he's being drafted right in those mid rounds. Dante Pettis was actually like a 12th round pick last year. I look back, people loved him and really thought he was going to be the number 1 wide receiver for the 49ers. So McCole Hardman's kind of going in that same range, 10th, 11th, 12th round, somewhere around there. And I think as the 5th option, he doesn't offer a ton of upside unless someone ahead of him goes down.
All right. Moving on to the next question here. I'm going to guess that Jordan was the one that wrote these questions just based on the descriptions here. So the first one we got is, who is this year's David Johnson? That's a first-round pick who stinks.
All right. Well, I like this guy. I have to preface by saying that, but it's but the most realistic guy for me is Nick Chubb. I just feel you look at his scenario. If he struggles, which he hasn't done that to this point, but if he does, he's got a very capable back, and one that even might be better than him. Maybe more talented wise is Kareem Hunt. And I kind of posed the question today in our chat, if Chubb goes down, where are you taking Hunt? And it would be in this range too. Like, he's a first round pick if nobody else is there. So going the opposite way, if we're selecting Chubb in the first round, that's his ADP right now. If something were to happen to him, or injury or inefficiency or something like that, they can turn to a similar type of back, a similar talented back, and not skip a beat. And so if anything kind of goes south this year with the new offense, I don't think there's going to be hesitation to go to Kareem Hunt. So I wouldn't project it unless an injury happens, because I do like Chubb with the opportunity he has in the offense this year. But realistically, when you have a guy that good behind him, it definitely presents a lot of risk to taking Chubb in the first round, and therefore he could be the one that doesn't return you value.
All right, good answer there, Blake. Your Bears gave up a whole bunch of picks to the Raiders for Khalil Mack, and now you're hating on them twice in a row. What's going on here?
Yeah, so Josh Jacobs, depending on what kind of league you're drafting in, is going to be at the end of the first, start of the second, depending on what you're drafting. But Josh Jacobs, ultimately, my hate for him kind of comes from this kind of contradiction here. Like I was saying earlier, Derek Carr likes to throw short, but he doesn't like to throw short to his running back. They barely used Josh Jacobs in the passing game last year, and I really don't understand why. And now that they have more tight ends and they have more receivers to be throwing to, I don't expect them to start doing it. I mean, I know they have Jalen Richard there and some other weapons, but they like Lynn Bowden's going to be kind of like their joker back or whatever you want to call it, and I imagine he's going to be getting receptions. And I just don't really understand why they're not going to be involving Jacobs. And I haven't seen anything in the offseason to indicate that that's going to change. And I think if Derek Carr is going to kind of not lead this team to victory and the team's going to be struggling, that means they're going to be down and they're going to be throwing. And if they're not throwing to Jacobs, then he's not going to be valuable. So I just don't really see Jacobs, fulfilling that RB1 role for your team.
All right, I like it too. Doc, I'm looking at these answers here, and I think I'm going to like this one. And I could actually, without even you describing it, I'm probably going to agree with it, but I'd like to hear your answers.
Yeah, so I have Alvin Kamara, and he really is being drafted as a consensus top 5 guy in most drafts that I'm in. And based on his usage over the past 2 years, I think he's going to disappoint a lot of people. So in 2018, he was 4th in points per game. Last year, he was 8th in points per game. So it's been kind of a steady decline, and I expect him to take a few more steps back. But the reality is I don't think he's going to be able to handle a bell cow workload. I mean, I'd rather wait on a guy like Austin Eckler, who I think can provide similar value a whole round later. So I think Kamara's going to split more time with Lat Murray than people think, just based on his medical diagnosis, which I've mentioned quite a few times. But I think Sean Payton's a smart guy. I think he's going to want to save Kamara for the long term. So I see them really minimizing his usage, not minimizing, but really just lessening it over the course of the next few seasons. So instead of being a consensus top 5 back, I see him as a low-end RB1, maybe a mid-range RB2 rather than that top 5 guy a lot of people see him as.
All right, but he's still going to get 81 catches, right?
Always.
Absolutely.
All right. Who is this year's Juju Smith-Schuster, basically a top-tier wide receiver who kind of just flames out like he did last year?
All right, well, this one hurts a little bit because Juju is one of my favorite players in the league. So his issues stemmed from bad quarterback play after Ben went down. So a little bit of injury that he had, but I'm going to mostly put Juju's bad year on Rudolph. So getting that out of the way, I went with a guy that we actually have a personal bet on, which is DJ Moore. Now, since the bet, I've kind of risen on him a little bit. I feel like he's settling into that, top 10 range, type of guy. And, they brought in Robbie Anderson, but he's the main guy there. So my problem with him is my uncertainty with how much passing volume they're going to have. The Panthers last year had a significant amount of passing volume, and I feel like Teddy Bridgewater coming in is not the guy that you would think of as chucking it all over 40 plus 50 plus attempts a game. So my question for this offense, especially for Moore, is just how many targets he's going to get, how many receptions he's going to be able to get, the type of games that they're going to be in. And so I put him in this category just because I don't feel like he's going to necessarily be bad or stink or anything like that, but I just feel like with the uncertainty, he's a little bit too far up people's rankings for my liking.
All right, I got to find my mute button for you real quick. Blake, who do you got here?
So I have Cortland Sutton. I don't think it's really any secret that I don't really care for the Broncos. I don't really think that Cortland Sutton's going to be like the main guy that everyone's hoping he's going to be this year. They're a run-first offense, first and foremost. Drew Lock's not like a stud quarterback. He's fine. I think he's getting a little more hype this offseason than maybe he should be. Melvin Gordon catches passes. Philip Lindsay catches passes. I think Jerry Judy's actually probably going to have a better season than a lot of people think, even with the lack of offseason training camp. So I think he's not going to surpass Sutton, but I think he's going to have a shot at it the next year. Not to mention they also have Fant, and I don't know if you guys know this, but Drew Lock and Albert O actually came from the same school and played together and had a nice rapport there. So a lot of people are saying that Albert O could actually overtake Fant, even though Fant is one of those Iowa tight ends that everyone loves, like Kittle. And actually, Jake Butt and Tim Patrick have also been getting a lot of hype this training camp. I'm not really sure I see it with either of them, but I'm also not a Broncos beat reporter, so maybe they're saying something that I'm not. And not to mention, they also have Deshaun Hamilton, who was supposed to be like this hotness last year, and they also drafted Handler. And I just think that there's just a lot of competition, and Drew Lock probably will end up being good with all these great weapons, but I don't think I can predict really who's going to be like a real steal here in the draft. I just think I can say confidently that Sutton isn't going to be getting you what you want him to be.
All right, I'll give you bonus points if you can say Albert O's last name.
Let me look at it. Hang on a second. I have to see it first.
We'll come back to you, Doc. Who's your guy?
Well, first, I like the Cortland Sutton one, and this just reminds me a lot of this conversation. My least favorite part about this time of year is all the hype that people get in training camp, and I think people read way too much into it, because the reality is offensive coordinators and head coaches are using guys everywhere, and people read way too much. This guy's getting first team reps, this guy's getting second team reps, but realistically they want to see what a guy can do with the first team offense, and you're never going to get to see how he shines until you put him in that situation. So that's just my one side note to people when you're reading this hype, is don't read into it too much. I mean, you can read into it and see what's going on, but I think a lot of people go crazy with reading into it. But my wide receiver is Amari Cooper, and we mentioned him earlier in another episode as well. But, I mean, I love CeeDee Lamb. I think on day one, CeeDee Lamb is the most talented wide receiver on this team. Amari Cooper's actually struggled with drops a little bit over the past 2 years. So I think CeeDee Lamb's going to bite into his target share a little bit. I'm not overly confident Amari Cooper being a wide receiver 1 or even a high-end wide receiver 2. I do think they have 3 very talented wide receivers that are all going to be involved in this passing game. So I think Amari Cooper will be solid, but I don't know if he's going to be that top 10 guy that a lot of people expect him to be.
All right. You got those bonus points coming your way?
Albert Oku. Nope, I don't got it. I don't have it.
Nope.
Next time.
You actually lost 100 points too. I forgot to mention that. So now we're into some other different kind of questions. Just some kind of guessing for 2020. The first one is, how many 100-plus catch wide receivers will we have in 2020? And actually, scratch out wide receiver. It could be any player. 100-catch player.
Gosh.
I mean, if you guys want
that
to add
changes
C-Mac or somebody like that, you can. But how many 100-catch players are we going to have in 2020? And last year we had 5, and we had Michael Thomas, Christian McCaffrey, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, and Julian Edelman. Julio Jones just missed the cut with 99. So last year we had 5. Zach?
Okay, well, I'll just rattle off who I think are locks in here. I'm reading a lot of the same names, but for me it's Julio, Michael Thomas, Devontae Adams, Hopkins, Godwin. The maybes that I have are Tyreek Hill. I know he's kind of thought of as more, the speedster deep threat, but he actually does, rack up a lot of receptions. He's been very close in the, high 80s, low 90s. I also have A-Rob, so I think he could do that, and being in the Bears offense, being the primary receiver there. Juju, he could definitely get back to that spot. I've talked about more. I feel like he could, get to the 100 mark even with the uncertainty with volume there. I also have Keenan Allen I have Beckham or Landry. I feel like one of those guys is going to be able to do it. You would think more of a Jarvis Landry type, but I just think even with the lesser pass volume that one of them is going to take a step forward due to Baker playing a little bit better. And then the underrated guy I have is Golden Tate. You wouldn't think of him anymore at this point of his career being able to do that, but he was so consistent, man, getting 90 plus receptions. So he's right on that verge for me. So I like to be an optimist. I like to say give me more points. This is fantasy. We want players to just go bananas all the time. So I went ahead and said 10 for me.
All right. Are you adding C-Mac into that list too?
Sure, I'll add C-Mac.
All
So
right, so we
I
got
guess
11.
I got to bump it up to 11, but 10 was a good number to just say it doubles this year.
All right. Blake, who do you got here?
Yeah, so a lot of the same names, obviously. Golden Tate is not on mine, but I like that spicy take. Michael Thomas, pretty much a shoe-in, I think. Devontae Adams, the same thing. Chris Godwin, despite Mike Evans maybe taking some stuff from him, I think Godwin has a pretty decent shot, giving what he's shown us so far, and Tom Brady coming in, kind of being a little bit more of a consistent upgrade. DJ Moore, I think, can definitely do it. Jarvis Landry, I think, will do it. I don't think Odell is going to get it. Jarvis Landry, I think, is just going to be a nice little outlet for them, along with Kareem Hunt. And since we had running backs, I'm also going to add in here CMC and Eckler. Yeah, and I think my maybes really are only Robinson, just because I'm really not sure who that quarterback is. I'm not sure, how much they're going to be running the ball this year. If they're using their tight ends, like there's a lot in flux with the Bears right now. Sigh. And then Julio Jones, Tyreek Hill, and Kenny Galladay are my other maybes. So I have let's see, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'll say 9. I'll say 9 total. I'll say some of those maybes don't get it. So I'll be saying 9 100 catch wide receivers.
Okay, yeah, a couple that Apex didn't have, but a lot that are. And then Jordan, do you have any new ones for us, or a lot of the same?
I think pretty much the same. Thomas, Adams, Robinson, Moore, Godwin. I had Travis Kelce. I don't know if anyone else brought him up, but he had 97 receptions, so he was right on the board. And Mahomes missed a few games, so I think he could be in that conversation. Only other one I may throw in there, one of the Rams receivers. They both had 90-plus receptions last year, so right on the fence as well. So wouldn't be surprised if one of them took the next step forward. But I'm going to say 8. So do I get a prize?
No.
I'm out then.
What about, and I didn't hear this name at all, what about Saquon Barkley?
I don't think there's going to be enough there for him to get 100.
Oh, because Golden Tate's taking them all.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, some good answers there. I agree with a lot of them. Tate kind of surprised me, but it's not a bad answer. And then Allen Robinson he gets a lot of targets. Julio and Michael Thomas are always up there. Devontae Adams. So there's really nobody that I don't agree with. So you guys all get a gold star for this one. No points, but gold stars. The next one we have is, and this one I did word right. I actually said players and not just kept it to one position. It is, how many players will have double digit what did I say? Receiving touchdowns. So just receiving touchdowns. Last year there were 3. Kenny Galladay led the way with 11, and then Cooper Kupp and Mark Andrews both had 10. And then there was a handful of 9s: Michael Thomas, Chris Godwin, Devontae Parker, Marvin Jones, Jared Cook. So how many do we see having double digit touchdowns in 2020?
All right. Well, here I go with my optimist answer. Again, I said 7. I put Julio in there. We don't really kind of consider him a heavy touchdown guy, but I predict a good year for him, so I put him in there. I put Michael Thomas. He was on the edge. Give him the bump. I put Hill. Yeah, he missed a couple games last year to injury. I think him coming back could do that. I put Evans. I believe he's going to be more of the touchdown guy. He's done that in the past, no doubt. But with Brady there, I think Godwin's going to be the receptions, and Evans is going to kind of get the touchdowns. I put Galladay again. I put Odell Beckham. I feel like he could take a nice bump up. He kind of had a bad year last year. I believe he only had 4, but he was still 75 for over 1,004. So like I said earlier with Baker, if they can get the offense kind of especially their chemistry turned around, I could put him in that range because he's been able to do it before. I put Hopkins up there. I'm not too big on Hopkins doing it, but like I said with the first couple answers we had, if they open the offense up, I think that provides the range for them to do it. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking about Kelsey. He might be able to do it, so I guess I'll bump it up to 8. I wouldn't really think any running backs are going to get double digits, so I'll stick with that.
All right, Blake.
You know what, Jerry? I'm gonna have to grab my charger because my computer is about to die all of a sudden. So you'll have to edit this out. Give me 1 second.
Motherfucker.
Sorry.
Ha ha ha! More work for you.
Oh man, you guys all suck. I fucking hate everybody. I can't wait to just fire everybody.
You suck even more.
Where's my?
I'm still here.
Oh, here we go.
I literally had it at 80% before I started.
Likely story.
Yeah, likely story.
All right. We're good.
All right. So, I guess we're just on to you.
Yeah, so I only have 5 guys on here. I think Michael Thomas is a shoo-in for it. Tyreek Hill, I think definitely could have it, especially with a healthy Patrick Mahomes. I know Patrick Mahomes missed a few games last year. I suppose Travis Kelce could get it as well, but it's kind of might sound stupid, but I feel like when after players get their contract, they're slightly less productive than the year before when they're trying to play for one. Devontae Adams is another one. CMC, and then begrudgingly, I'm going to include Mixon on this as well.
Mixon, you got 2 running backs on that list, huh?
Yep.
All right.
Hot takes.
What do we got? Doc?
A lot of the same. Galladay, Adams. I had Godwin. He had 9 last season, so I think he can take the next step forward and add another one to that total. He did miss a few games. I guess the different ones I have then, Cooper, or someone else mentioned Cooper Kupp. Or actually, they didn't. So he had 10 last season.
I think you mentioned
I was like, did I? I was like, did I? It was me. Oh, just right now. Okay. But yeah, Cooper Kupp had over 10 last year. He is their primary red zone threat, so people don't see him in that light, but he is a guy that scores quite a few touchdowns. He missed half the season the year before, and he was on a 10-touchdown pace as well, so I think he's a guy that, not a shoo-in, but he definitely has that ability. No one mentioned Calvin Ridley, who had 10 touchdowns his rookie season, was on that pace again until he got injured last year as well. That's going to be a high-volume passing offense. Definitely a lot of ability there. And A.J. Brown is another name I would throw in the mix as well. Had 8 touchdowns, but really was only productive for about half the season. So I don't really see too many other guys as red zone threats there. Jonnu will chip in here and there, but I think A.J. Brown's a big-bodied receiver that'll see a lot of those red zone looks. So I had 6 in total.
All right. I want to throw 2 more names out there, see if you guys agree with them. One he did in his rookie year, Mike Williams.
No.
That would be pretty much half of Tyrod's touchdowns. And then the other one is he's done it 2 years ago, and then last year he had 8, Tyler Lockett.
Close.
It's going to be close. I really like Tyler Lockett, but given that Will Dissly's coming back, they added Greg Olsen. I really just don't see it happening.
All right.
How could you not have Metcalf, Apex?
I was just thinking that I was going to throw him in here if I had a chance to. But, I think I actually statted him for more than 10, so I didn't really go back and look at everybody that I statted to kind of answer. I just was kind of going off the top of my head. But yes, I have to put DK Metcalf in here. Double-digit touchdowns, lock it in.
So we'll just up yours to, you think, 32. Every single wide receiver one is going to do it.
I told you, man, I'm the optimist. I'm like, give me more points, more touchdowns, more yards. So absolutely.
All right, a couple more questions here, and then see if you guys have anything else to add. But these are my final 2. How many quarterbacks will throw for over 4,500 yards? Last year we had 4. Jameis Winston, Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, and Phillip Rivers. Matt Ryan, he actually missed a game, and he was only 332 or 432 yards away, something like that math. So he could have done it if he played that last game. So how many do you guys got this year? Apex?
Well, I have Mahomes. If he doesn't miss games, I believe he would have been, up there after throwing 5,000 in his first year as a starter. Same thing with Breeze. I think he missed it because of injury. I'm projecting a kind of a leap forward for Wentz with, some healthier and more options to throw to. Ryan's on the border for me. Him and Dak are kind of my maybes, as well as Brady if he's able to kind of take the weapons that he has at his age of 89 and be able to throw for 4,500. But Watson's another under the radar guy that many people kind of wouldn't think with losing Hopkins that he's going to throw more. But I just think it might be a go crazy type of year for Watson to just prove that he can do it without a elite wide receiver. So I feel like, especially if they need to come back in a lot of games because they're not as good, that he'll be thrown a lot. So I said 5 for this one.
Yeah, Watson has two, not just one, but two pass catching backs out of the backfield too. Blake, who do you got? Who do you got different? And then who do you got total?
So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8, so I'm a bit of an optimist too. The one that I think that I'm really high on that I don't think a lot of other people on is Russell Wilson. I think he could honestly be the quarterback 2 on the season. They just have a lot more weapons. They've been talking about wanting to have him ball out and pass more. I really think that this team come together. The kind of only sore spot on the Seahawks team is sort of their uncertainty with the running backs. But really, I think this team could make a Super Bowl run, and I think Russell Wilson's going to be throwing a lot more than we've seen in the past. So I think he's definitely the one that I've kind of wanted to highlight here. But I have Mahomes, Breeze, Watson, Dak with all those weapons they have now. Matt Ryan, even though I feel like this narrative still exists. Like every other year, I feel like he's like good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. And then Tom Brady, Kyler, and that rounds them out.
All right, Doc. Anybody different? And then who do you have?
So I had 8 in total. Same: Mahomes, Murray, Watson, Dak, Matt Ryan, Tom Brady. My 2 different ones. I had Carson Wentz as one. I think he has that potential. He had 4,100 yards last year with really no wide receivers. So, if they put more on his shoulders this year, he'd be an outside candidate.
Does he get hurt if they put any more weight on his shoulders? I don't know.
Yeah, why not?
Poor choice of words.
Yeah.
Why not? Then my other one, I already talked about him earlier, but I think the Jaguars' offense could be bad enough where Minshew could have a Jameis Winston kind of season where he just throws for a bunch of meaningless yards.
All right. What about a guy that has done it the past 2 years in a row? He wasn't listed. Jared Goff?
Probably not. I don't think there's going to be enough there for him to hit 4,500.
Right.
He's one of those weird QBs that I like so many pieces of that team, but I don't like him.
Yeah,
it happens sometimes.
All right. And then my final question that I had was, so Larry Fitzgerald is 271 catches away from tying Jerry Rice's record. So if you split that in half, you can't get half a catch, so he rounded it up. If he gets 86 catches this year, he's going to be halfway to what he needs. So would he come back in 2021 to try to break that record? 86 is, he's been in the league for 16 years. He's hit 86 or more in 8 of them, and then 86 or more, or 86 or less in the other 8. So half of his time in the league, he's done what he needs to do to break Jerry Rice's record if he just does it for 2 more years. Do you guys think he comes back and tries to break it, or what do you guys think?
All right, so 86 passes for Larry Fitzgerald, catches, I should say, is definitely attainable for him. I feel like, like you said, he's hit that mark on half of his years, and I just feel that when players are chasing that kind of history, they may not come out and say that, that's something they're going for. Especially Larry, he's always been a team player, but when the record is in your sights and you're have a legit chance to get it, I think he will definitely choose to come back. And Larry has been definitely one of the higher team first players in the league since he came into it in his 16 years. And but like I said, with history that close, I feel like if he has a nice year, it gets about half of it this year, I think he would decide to come back to try for it.
What you said about kind of how like the kind of player he is, like most players in the back of their mind, like think about it, even though they kind of say something else. I think he really does mean it, but like I think he's not going to come back because it's something that matters to him alone, unless they make a really deep playoff run and like they miss the Super Bowl this year, or if like COVID shortens the season, he kind of feels like he's shortchanged and can do an extra. I mean, he's 37. I mean, there's a certain age, especially a wide receiver, where you just kind of trail off and you're just not the same player you are anymore. And I think he'd rather go out on a high note than not. And I think just breaking a record might not be the reason enough for him to come back.
All right, Doc, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think he'd specifically do it for the record. I think he may come back, but if his body's healthy and if he feels like he can still contribute to the team, I think that's more of the determining factor for him rather than breaking the record.
Fair enough. All right. Blake, you had a question here. Do you wanna ask it?
Yeah, well, less about specific players and more about league formats and stuff. Obviously COVID's turned quite a things on your head, and I've seen a lot of people in different fantasy groups and forums and things like that talking about changes that they're making to their leagues due to COVID-19. I was just wondering, have you guys seen any changes, or are you making any personal changes in any leagues that we don't all share together due to COVID-19 to maybe help the roster or help the quality of the league?
Apex, why don't you start?
I think the easiest answer for that is to just add more IR spots, and I'm a big advocate in the leagues that I'm running to do that, as well as some platforms allow you to change who's available to be put on IR. So I have it on that, if you're deemed out, so if you test positive like later in the week and they don't really have time to put you on that COVID list and you're just on out, they can put that player on IR. And it's kind of like an honor system. Like, obviously if the guy hurts his leg or something like that, don't put him on the IR just yet. But it'll be pretty common knowledge if we see that, I don't know, DeAndre Hopkins, test positive or whatever, and that owner would put him on there. That's a, pretty legit thing to use that spot. Some platforms are also putting COVID specific IR players or spots in their league. So, that's something that I've seen just with the IRs being increased. So you're able to, if the guy gets it late in the week, be able to open up a roster spot for you. So, that's the biggest thing. If your league isn't a fab budget already, I think it's probably the best time to switch to a fab budget. I just think that, a traditional waiver order based on standings isn't going to fly this year. I think you're going to be able to, or you need to be able to go to the waiver wire and spend on a guy to make sure you get a replacement for a top level guy that you might lose for a week or so.
All right, Doc, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I'll mention briefly is I was talking about this with a coworker today, actually, is we're trying to change it so that you can have a auction on a weekly basis instead of drafting for a season long. So essentially, you could draft a team and let's say half your team goes down with COVID. Really the draft was kind of irrelevant. So I have a lot of league mates that are kind of concerned about that. So rather than drafting for a season, we want to do an auction or maybe even just a draft. We're kind of discussing it right now, but just do a weekly draft where you're essentially getting a new team every week based on who's playing, but you're still accumulating wins and points for the season. So it's kind of a different approach. I haven't really seen anyone else discuss anything like that, but just trying to come up with a unique way in case, someone's roster goes down with COVID.
Yeah, I think that's really that's really interesting. I've never heard anything like that before. Like you kind of said, I think one easy fix that if you're a commissioner or you're a league and you really don't know how to handle this or you don't want to have to worry about it, just switching to maybe like a best ball league just for the season maybe is the way to go. Just so you don't have to necessarily worry about that, or just adding more roster spots too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the middle of where everybody answered. I in my personal leagues, I'm going to be adding a couple IR spots, maybe adding even a couple roster spots to make the benches a little bit deeper. I I don't know how you guys run your waivers, but my waivers, they're just your typical Monday night through early Wednesday morning. You're claiming your guys, throwing your fab budgets and whatever you want to do, and then you get your guy early Wednesday morning when you wake up in the morning and doing your morning routine. You see that you got your guy or you didn't get your guy, and then from Wednesday until game time Sunday, unless it's a Thursday night game, those guys are just free, and I think that's the best way to keep it because I heard on a different podcast that the COVID, like the time frame that you need to let the league know, let the officials know if you got a guy that's not going to be playing because of it is only 90 minutes before the game. So you need to be able to have that time before the game to be able to find a replacement if you have to. So you shouldn't have waivers on Sunday morning where they're not going to process until Monday. So make sure that they're free. If you need to make sure that they throw in money, maybe you could do that. That's something different. But make sure that you could get them instantly instead of having them go through a one or 2 day waiver process. And I was going to bring up the best ball thing too. I even threw it out to my league if they wanted to change it to a best ball format. They all said no, so it's no big deal. We just have to play our best lineups. But yeah, I mean that's COVID is a big thing, obviously in the MLB. Players have come down with it, and in the NBA, players have come down with it. In the NHL, which is the second best sport, no players have come down with it. Just so you guys know, but you just have to treat it basically just like an injury. I mean, you could sprain an ankle and be out for 2 weeks. It's no different than catching COVID and being out for 2 weeks. You can't really plan for it. You can't stop it from happening. It's not going to make you miss the season. It's just going to be an inconvenience, and that's basically what it comes down to. You're not going to if Ezekiel Elliott sprains his ankle week 1, you're gonna not have him until week 3. It's no different than if somebody catches COVID and they're on that little short-term IR for 2 weeks. So it's just a different name, basically.
Yeah, and a couple more things that I just want to add, just a couple quick tips. Like, if you have fab, make sure you're able to do a $0 bid. That's really important, especially this season. Another thing too, if just in general, if you're not making changes this season in your league due to COVID, you really need to rethink it. Even if some people might not like the changes, especially if it's a league you've been in for a while. This season, due to the quality of if you want to keep the quality of your league, you need to make a couple changes just for this season and just see how it goes. And maybe there are changes that you want to keep longer term. And the last thing I'll say too is, for me at least, I always try to do this, but I try to get a piece of all the offenses I like, right? So I'm usually not drafting 2 players from the team, but sometimes I will. This season, I'm really, really trying not to, because it's going to be a lot easier for one player to catch COVID and another player from the same team. So that's one other thing I'm doing.
I think one more thing that I do want to add to is make sure, if you are the commissioner or if you're just in touch with the commissioner or whatever, just make sure that you guys have a payout contingency in place. Make sure if it goes X amount of games, X amount of weeks, you're paying out this. If it doesn't go this, we could roll your payment into next year, or we could just refund everybody. Just make sure that you guys have that in place even before the season starts, because you don't want those people coming back and bitching saying, hey, we only played 9 weeks. Can I have my money back? Or, hey, we played 5 weeks. Are we splitting the pot? Make sure you guys. That's probably the biggest thing, because at the end of the day, I mean, we're all playing fantasy for fun, but most of our leagues are paid, and you're trying to win money too doing it, and money changes people. So you want to make sure that it's written down, it's on a document, everybody has access to it. You're not just if somebody asks a question, you don't just want to, all right, let me get to you in an hour, and then in that hour you're drafting something up just to make it look like you fabricated something. You want to make sure, okay, here's a quick answer, boom, there it is. This is what we talked about. You weren't there to agree on it because you were on vacation, but this is what we talked about. They just need to know. Anybody else got anything either COVID related or just something that while we were talking about today's questions, you just thought of an idea in your head and you wanted to bring it up?
I think I'm good, other than the fact that DK Metcalf is my guy.
You're gonna have
But
to
not
share
good
him because
enough
he's
to
one of
be
my
your
guys too. Jordan, anything over there? Quiet.
I don't have anything else.
All right, so let's close it out then. So guys, make sure you guys check out thefantasymafia.com. Check out our Facebook pages. We got 2 of them. The first one is The Fantasy Mafia. That's our main page. Not that it's not super active right now, but right now it's kind of going through a little bit of we're just trying to get everything together during the season. In season, it's going to be that's where everything's pretty much going to come out from. You want to ask us questions? We're going to try to go live from there at least once a week. So just make sure you check out the Fantasy Mafia. Check out the Fantasy Hotspot. That's our sister page. That's where a lot of action is going on right now. That's where you guys can go in and just start up conversations, enter in on our razzes, answer our polls, ask us questions, talk to the actual admins. We're not going in there as a mystery person and using our hashtag and you don't know who you're talking to. You're actually talking to a Jordan, a Zach, a Blake, a Jerry. You're talking to all of us. We're answering multiple threads a day. Just somebody says something and you're scrolling through it. We're answering those questions and just chiming in on the conversation. And then check out our Twitters too. I've been getting a little bit more active in mine. Mine's up there. Dr. Fantasyholics is up there too. We've kept them displayed on the screen for every podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you could just see it right on the screen. It's been on here the whole show. Do you guys use Twitter? Do you guys have anything that you want me to add? I can throw it in here.
Yeah. Mine's is at Balakay, Balaky.
Balakay.
Yep.
All right, and then Myers, you got one?
I do. I forget what it actually is. I don't tweet very often. I have shared a couple of my articles, so I'm really trying to pick up, that aspect of it, of the social media, just a little bit branching out. But I'll get to you with my official one, and then next time I'm on, you can put it up there as well.
All right, so let me let it just display a little bit longer. So let's try to find a couple more seconds of fill time here, just so people could kind of see what the Twitter handles are. And Twitter is great. If you don't use Twitter, definitely hop on there, follow the 3 of us. Plus, just follow anybody that you can see that has football in their description, fantasy sports in their description. If you have the push notifications on, you'll know a player is out of the game before the player even knows. I mean, that's how quick it is. Twitter. You follow the right people, and you're gonna have a head start on. You're gonna have a heads up on your league. And I mean, like even though I wasn't super active in posting things for the last couple of years, I've always had the notifications on, and I've always known what was going on every Sunday, every Saturday, every Monday, whatever day of the week that the news came out. I always had it displayed right to my push notifications right on the phone because I had to be on top of things. So make sure, if you guys don't have a Twitter, go sign up, follow everybody that you can. It's probably the most newsworthy, best social media page there is out there.
And you're really plugging yourself in. You really got to follow the right people that like beat reporters for your team, different fantasy analysts, and you're really plugging yourself in and getting the news that you want to get, really tailoring it to yourself. And even if you're not a big Twitter user, it's a really great tool to have for the fantasy season.
Yeah, the one year I went and I followed all 32 teams, and then I went to each individual team, and all of a sudden, like, their own beat reporters' Twitter handles came up. So you just continuously click follow, and then by the end of the day, you got 150 people that you're following, and you're getting news all day long. So I think that about does it. If we're all set, we will see you guys next episode. We're only a couple episodes away from the start of the regular season. And then when that happens, we're gonna just be coming on here and just plugging a bunch of stuff. We're gonna do some start sits. We're gonna do injuries. We're gonna try to do a little bit of DFS. None of us are really professionals in that sense, but we do all play it. So we'll come on here with our takes on DFS, and hopefully we could all win some money together. So until next episode, we'll see you guys then.